Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. The Senate is hammering out round 2 of federal help for the pandemic-stricken states and citizens. Linking up with us this morning to discuss that and more is Senator Maggie Hassan. Thanks for joining us, Senator.
Thanks for having me.
So what, in your estimation, has to be in this bill? Will the state be getting, that is New Hampshire, be getting budget relief?
So this is the most significant public health crisis we've had in 100 years and the greatest economic crisis since the Great Depression. And it is absolutely essential that we get another relief package done that provides critical aid to individuals, to small businesses. We need to make sure we are funding at an adequate level testing and contact tracing so our public health response meets the magnitude of this health crisis. And that's also obviously really critical for economic recovery too. We need to make sure that we are supporting our hospitals and our nursing homes. We have to have money and guidance for our schools. Everybody wants our kids to go back to school, but they need to be able to do that safely. And we need to be able to make sure that the resources are there for them to do that. And finally, we need state and local aid in this package. Every economist who has briefed us says this, and this is one of the things holding up a package. But the thing that is really concerning to me is that we have been pushing Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell since mid-May to come to the table and negotiate about these issues so we can get this package done and continue helping individuals and businesses stabilize through this pandemic. It's very disappointing to me that we don't have a deal done yet.
You've been pushing for almost $500 billion in aid for education, all the way from pre-K childcare all the way through the community colleges and universities. So take us through your proposal and how quickly could this money get out the door if it does pass as part of this package?
Well, we need to focus on getting money to our states and localities, but in particular, our school districts. I recently sat down with educators, parents, teachers from around New Hampshire to talk about what they're grappling with as they consider reopening, and whether your local data tells you it's safe to reopen completely in person or remotely or a hybrid approach. Schools are going to need additional dollars to do everything from buy additional sanitation supplies to personal protective equipment. By the way, it's hard for them to find personal protective equipment, which is another issue that we need to address in this bill. They also need to do things like expand broadband access, not just for students who might be learning remotely from home, but students even in the school building, since they want to minimize the amount of physical transitions kids make from classroom to classroom. So these are the types of resources that our schools need, and they also need guidance about what to do in particular situations, like if a student or a teacher tests positive. So I'll keep pushing for those resources. We need to expedite getting the dollars to the front lines as effectively as possible. But right now, the focus needs to be on getting the Republicans to agree among themselves about where they think we should be and negotiate in good faith with us.
I don't think anyone disputes that there's a tremendous need out there from citizens to all sorts of sectors in the economy, education, and whatnot. But where's all this money going to come from? Are we borrowing this from China? Is it being printed? How do you pick up the tab on this spending?
Look, what the chairman of the Federal Reserve, as well as other economists, have made clear is that we need to invest in individuals and small businesses, in our public health response, in supporting our educators, and child care centers are included in that. If we are going to get through this with some level of fiscal stability, right? We know that after we get through the pandemic, on the other side of this, we will have to continue to work to rebuild and grow our economy, and then a growing economy will allow us to deal with our debt and deficit. But what economists are very clear about is that a failure to invest in additional relief right now will make matters worse and give us a bigger hole that is even harder to climb out of.
The acting Secretary of Homeland Security appeared before the committee on which you serve, the Homeland Security Committee, this last week. A lot of the focus was on the response to those protests and the unrest around the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon. First off, do you think that the DHS response to those protests was appropriate?
Well, so it was good that we had Acting Secretary Chad Wolf before us at our hearing. And I wish we had also had state and local officials and law enforcement there, because some of what the Acting Secretary focused on was what he considered a lack of communication. And I would have liked to hear the other side of things. What is very clear is that federal law enforcement felt that they were faced with significant escalation in protests, especially late at night. But it is unclear to me how well they focused on de-escalating. So we really need more information from Mr. Wolf and from DHS, and we really need to hear from local and state officials about their experience and the lack of coordination that they reported.
Yeah, certainly part of the confusion there was the protest dynamic during the day, and during the night was very different. But Acting Secretary Wolf told you, and when you got to finally ask questions, it had to be pretty quick, but he said they were trained in de-escalation, and that's what they were doing there. Do you believe him when he says that?
Well, when you look at some of the videos that I think we've all seen, it doesn't appear that way. That's why it would be really important to have a more comprehensive hearing. I've asked him to provide us with more information about the de-escalation training that they had. Certainly some of the tactics that we saw on videotape were concerning, and that's why I think we need to expand this inquiry. I do want to say one thing, that one of the things we wanted to make sure we did was acknowledge that the Federal Protective Service lost an officer during some protests in Oakland, Officer Underwood, and our hearts go out to his family.
Speaking of reform on the law enforcement side of things, do you believe that police should retain their qualified immunity from lawsuits?
Look, we need to hold police accountable for wrongdoing, and it's really critical after the horrible murder of George Floyd that we are having this long overdue conversation about systemic racism through our criminal justice system and throughout society generally. And we certainly need to make reforms, including banning things like chokeholds, making sure that we are transparent and disclose incidents of police misconduct. We need to narrow the circumstances under which military equipment can be used by local and state police. We need to increase training, and we certainly need to give police partnerships with other professionals so that they're not always responding to incidents that aren't necessarily criminal justice incidents. On the issue of qualified immunity, we have to be able to hold police accountable. And the way qualified immunity has developed in the courts raises some concerns about that. But I've been having conversations with members of communities of color in New Hampshire, as well as with law enforcement. And what I don't want to see happen is unintended consequences through the complete elimination of qualified immunity. So I think those are conversations we need to continue to have to understand how best to deal with this issue. And it's also going to be really important that we have a response here in the Senate that could get bipartisan support.
You mentioned systemic racism. Do you believe there is systemic racism in New Hampshire and that it affects law enforcement here?
Certainly when you talk with members of communities of color in New Hampshire, they relate incidents that reflect that we have issues of systemic racism in New Hampshire. And that's something that I think we all have to come together and focus on and have the kind of conversations and have the kind of change that will enable us to have a more just system.
Let's circle back to the pandemic here. You have a severely immune-compromised son who's already battled respiratory illness in his life before. The danger posed to him by COVID-19 is very real. Do you believe the state is putting him at greater risk by not mandating mask wearing in New Hampshire?
Look, I think it's really important that we continue in New Hampshire to work together to follow the best public health guidance that there is about how to combat COVID-19. And I'm going to continue to focus on that. I do think that it is appropriate for us to have a statewide mask order, because we simply know that when that happens, more people wear masks. And I think it is still not clear to some people in New Hampshire and across the country that when we ask people to wear masks, it's not about protecting you when you wear a mask. It's about protecting other people. And you get protected when other people wear masks. So it's really important that we do everything we can to lower the spread of this virus, which, as you point out, can be lethal. And even when people survive it, it can create great disabilities. So I think we need to do everything we can to increase mask wearing. And I think we need to acknowledge that it's not fair to be asking store clerks to enforce mask wearing rules, right? We really need to make sure we're all committed to it together.
You governed this state for 2 terms. Do you believe Governor Sununu made the right call in giving school districts such leeway and freedom to design their own back-to-school plans?
Look, we all want our kids to be back in school, and it's also really important, though, that they be able to do it safely. I think we need to continue to focus on getting resources to our schools. It is unbelievable to me that as part of the Republican proposal that Senator McConnell did finally make recently, school aid was conditioned on schools reopening in person regardless of what their local data told them about the spread of the virus. So we need to make sure that our schools have the resources they need. They also need, when I've been talking to school administrators, clearer guidance from federal and state authorities about what they should do in specific instances, such as when a student tests positive or a teacher tests positive. And I think we need to continue to hone that guidance and advice, because until we do, there's just going to be a lot of indecision on the ground, and that makes it very difficult to reopen in a safe way.
And as we wrap up here, I want to ask you about something, an issue you didn't take a position on in 2018, but I think we're going to be revisiting at the end of this year. If Bill Gardner seeks another term as Secretary of State when the legislature convenes for the first time at the end of this year, will you support him?
What I'm focused on right now is working with state and federal officials to make sure that every Granite Stater can safely cast their vote on November 3rd, and also in our upcoming primary on September 8th. So that's what we need to focus on. That requires that we have more support for the United States Postal Service, and we get the Postal Service's recent appointee. President Trump recently made a political appointment there. We need him to change some of the things that he's done that have been slowing down mail, because at the end of the day, what we need to make sure is that every Granite Stater who wants to cast an absentee ballot can get that ballot promptly, can mail it in and have confidence that it's going to get to election officials in time to be counted. We need to focus, too, on making sure that when our polling places do open for in-person voting, both the workers and the voters feel safe. So right now, that's where the focus needs to be. And I think Granite Staters need to look for leaders who will consistently support safe and easy access to voting.
All right, Senator Hassan, thank you for joining us this Sunday morning on Close Up.
Thanks so much, Adam. Be safe and be well.
You as well. Stay safe down there in Washington.